Welcome, Puyaka Puyaka. I'm your host, Tijani Musa, and today in the studio, I've got my brother who is going to give us some knowledge about self-care, self-love. But before we get to that, let me take this time and this opportunity to introduce our guest who is in the studio with us, and so that people get to know who is speaking to them and where the brother is coming from before he start, spilling the knowledge. So the brother in front of us his name is Paul Calcote, and he's a young pastor out of Houston. He graduated from Mississippi College with a bachelor's in Christian studies, and New Orleans Baptist Theology Seminary with a divine in collegiate ministry. He's passionate about empowering and equipping people to be all that God has called them to be. His overarching goal are to love God and to love his people. Paul is the host of the Real People, Real Talk podcast, and he uses his voice to continue fulfilling the Great Commission as we navigate this new normal. His podcast features rich and relevant conversations about current events, relationship, mental health, and much more, but from a Christian world view. Paul, go ahead in your own words. That's right, man. Real people, real talk. In your own words, tell us about yourself, your story, and about your podcast.
Most definitely, man. First, to Johnny, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for having me. I'm grateful for you and what your podcast stands for, bro. So thank you.
Yeah, man.
As it
Welcome.
says,
That's right. Welcome to the podcast.
glad to be here. I love one of your taglines as I was doing my research, engaging, inspiring the young. And as we was talking about before we got on the air, I was listening to 5 COVID-19 keys to fighting stress. So if you're listening, watching now, and you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. I'm gonna finish it on my walk today. And so, but yes, to answer the question, man, you read it. That's me in a nutshell, man. I aspire, my 3 overarching goals in life is to love God, to love His people, and enjoy life. And I just want to keep it simple. And so I started a podcast called Real People, Real Talk, as you see with the shirt trying to represent.
That's
And
right.
really, yes, most definitely, bro. And my goal is to take each listener, and I want to make it personal, each listener from surviving to thriving in like 5 pillars: spiritually, physically, financially, emotionally, and relationally. Because I believe in holistic health. Of course, I'm a pastor. I want you to know Jesus, period. But after that, I want you to get your money right. I want you to get your body right. I want you to have healthy, thriving relationships. And I want you to be healthy mentally. And we're going to talk about that more later with self-care and self-love. And so that's my podcast. And also, I just want to encourage people and equip people to be all that God has called them to be. And don't waste any talents. Like we only got one life to live, so let's do it. So that's me and my podcast in a nutshell, bro.
Hey, man, I like it. I like it. Very, you call it simple, but that is delicate. Those 5 principles are very important because if you master those, you have a very fulfilling life. And so that is
Facts.
amazing. And thank you for all that you're doing with your podcast yourself and spreading knowledge and information to the community because you know that information is needed. So thank you for that.
Most definitely, bro. Likewise, the feelings are mutual.
All right, awesome. And so let's get right into the conversation.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Talk to us about self-love.
Unfriend, mute, and move on. Man.
You don't have time for negativity.
Exactly. You don't, man. Life is too short to spend it not taking care of ourselves. And so we should be forgiving others. We should be forgiving ourselves. Self-care looks like also saying no. Maybe you need to reduce your to-do list or work less hours, or if you can financially, because I don't know there's context there, or as a college student, take less hours. Self-care is not just about the manicures and the pedicures and vacations, but self-care is also, getting your 10,000 steps in a day, or working out, or doing your yoga, whatever you do. And so self-care is multifaceted, man. And it also looks like, and it's something for me as a pastor, because sometimes there's a stigma for mental health in the church. There's a stigma for mental health also in the Black community. A lot of times, if we're especially not our age group, but the previous age group before us, like, hey, hey, ain't nothing wrong with you. Just pray about it and it'll go away. Friends, like, I'm a man of the cloth, so I believe in prayer, but I say pray and go to counseling. All right. And so to Johnny, I say it like this, and then I'll let you jump in, man. If I have a headache, I'm gonna pray. All right, Lord, heal my headache. If that headache continues, bro, I'm gonna take some Advil and probably pray again.
That's right.
Now, if that headache goes on and on, I'm gonna get some professional help. And so the same way that God bless us with doctors and physical therapists and dentists to take care of our physical health, He blesses us with mental health experts and therapists and counselors and psychiatrists to help us to be healthy and whole mentally and emotionally, bro. So this want to kind of start off with the broad picture and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, that's for sure. When you were talking, I was listening to you, and you mentioned that self-care does not equate to selfishness, because it has self in it doesn't mean that you are selfish. Because when you are your best self, then you are able to tolerate your neighbor. You are able to tolerate the family members. So if you're not taking care of yourself, you are not giving 100% of yourself to the people you care about, the people you love. And self-care manifests in different ways.
True.
Like in COVID-19, how does self-care look like? Protecting my neighbor. How do I protect my neighbor? Protecting myself by wearing a mask.
Come on.
It's simple. Wear your mask and stay 6 feet apart when you're communicating. That is self-care. You're protecting yourself, at the same time also looking out for your neighbor. And then also, while you're talking, you mentioned about the stigmas in our community. Can you talk more into that, about stigmas, especially Black males not wanting to do that mental therapy or mental health because they think that we are tough, or we think that we don't we can't be emotionally vulnerable? Why is it like that?
Man, that is a wonderful question, and some things that, like you say, in the subculture of African Americans, and then even a subculture deeper than that is just Black males, because growing up we taught, hey, men don't cry and be tough, and words won't hurt you, and just things like that, and those things are not true. Like, man, I'll be honest and open and transparent. Yeah, when I cried when Kobe died, I didn't know the dude at all. But when he passed away, I remember being in the kitchen after my wife went to bed, because as a man, I ain't gonna cry in front of my wife. Keep it real. And she probably watching like, oh, so you did cry. So I'm just like, why am I feeling this way? And then and the different mental health experts, like, it's okay to feel that, because although now I never rooted for Kobe, because I feel like he always had like the best team or whatever, and he was always had the most talent. And so I was like, why am I crying over somebody that I never met, I never rooted for? So all that to say, like, it's okay to feel what you feel. It's okay not to be okay. It's okay to get help. Like, I'll be honest with you, I wrote a paper about depression, and one of the quotes that stuck out the most was that depression is like the common code of life. In other words, we all go through it, because we all get the cold from time to time. We all go through it, just at different seasons in our lives and different degrees. And so self-care, self-love, and prioritizing your mental health, it's not a female thing. That's a person thing. And the fact that you're struggling mentally, and the fact that you should seek help, that doesn't mean that you're weak. It means that you're human. And actually, that's probably the most manly thing that you can do, is to take responsibility for your mental health. Because a lot of times as men, we want to be macho. We don't need nobody. We can do it by ourselves. But that's a lie. We need people. We need others. We need help. So once again, if you're struggling mentally, don't suffer in silence. Don't suffer in isolation. Speak up and speak out. Like I say, if you want to go there with the manly thing, the most manly thing that you can do is to take responsibility for your mental health, so you can be the best father, or the best husband, or the best son, or the best brother, or worker, or insert any other title that we as men wear, and we can be the best that we can be and impact others. So once again, it's all connected. As we're taking care of ourselves, we can be there for the people that we love. So that's an excellent question, because yeah.
And then you also, man, the knowledge keeps coming. You said depression is the common code of life.
Mm,
Wow. And I was listening to you, and you also mentioned that forgiving your neighbor is very important in self-care. um
mm,
I'm thinking in my own life, somebody does something to me, and I go through a series of questions. Why do they do this? What tempted them? Is there anything that I did to make them do this to me? What is my take
right.
into their action? What have I contributed to? And then at the end of the day, it comes down to decision. It comes down to me
Yeah.
accepting that, okay, that's a person. If God can forgive us, we can also forgive ourselves. And
Come
so,
on.
yep. And then getting to that place where I could forgive somebody because of what they've done to me. And you know what I've noticed over the years as well? When somebody does something to you, they actually forget what they do to you. And you keeping it,
Right.
yeah, you keeping it in your mind, you're affecting yourself, because they do it to you, they forget about it, and they move on with their own lives. And you keeping that in your mind, you're affecting your own mental while they move on with their own life. So the best thing that I've always done for myself is just forgive and move on. Can you talk to
Yeah.
us more broadly about forgiveness and how that partake into self-care?
Yes, most definitely. One of my mom's favorite preachers that she listened to is a lady by the name of Joyce Myers, and she said that drinking, no, I'm sorry, she said unforgiveness is like drinking poison, but you're hoping that the other person will die. It's not hurting the other person.
Wow.
It's not hurting the other person. You may think, I'm holding this resentment, I'm holding this bitterness. You're only hurting yourself. Or another metaphor is unforgiveness is like, holding somebody in prison, but the person that's in prison is yourself, and you are the one that have the key. And so I just want to say, and also, you got to rightly discern things like forgiveness. You can forgive somebody without them ever having to apologize. A lot of times we say we're not going to forgive this person until they apologize, until they admit they're wrong. Why would you give somebody else that much power over your life, over your mental health, over your emotional health? And so you got to forgive them and move on. And listen, now, forgiveness, it doesn't mean reconciliation. In
Right.
other words, not to, not to use too sensitive of a example, but if a woman is being is in an abusive relationship, she should leave that relationship, and she can forgive that person, but never have anything else to do with him. In other
Right.
words, like the charges have been dropped, no longer holding those feelings, but at the same time, shouldn't be back entangled in there and put yourself in danger. So I can forgive a person and still pray for them, but we ain't finna be texting, we ain't finna be talking, we
That's
ain't finna
right.
hang out.
That's
So
right.
forgiveness is key to your mental and emotional health. So I'm glad that you brought that up because that's important, bro.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I like I like the part that you added. Just because we're forgiving each other doesn't mean that we're buddies.
Facts.
Yeah, I'm forgiving you because I want a good health for myself, and I wish you well. It's not like I'm
Yeah.
praying for you to die or anything like that. I'm wishing you well, but I'm forgiving you for my own sake as well. So,
Facts.
but that doesn't mean that we're friends. We're not buddies. But if I meet you casually on the street, it's mutual respect. I've
Yep.
forgiven you and we move on. And like you said, when it gets to the point of abuse, obviously you're always trying to work things out, seeking professional help and whatnot. But if it gets to the point where it's not reconcilable and you have to go apart, yeah, forgive each other and then move on and pray that you find somebody else who will take care of you the same way that you would take care of them.
Most definitely, bro. And before you go to the next thing, another thing is as it relates to forgiving people but not being back in their friendships and relationships with them, just because, and I think I saw this on Instagram somewhere. I love this quote: just because you lose a person just because you lose me as a friend don't mean that you gained an enemy. And so I'm not gonna be rooting against you, but
Right.
I'm just not gonna be in your corner. So I just want to just throw that out there too, bro.
That's right. That's right. Hey, and hey, let's talk more into about self care and if you could walk us through think looking back in your college years, were there any experiences that have put you in a place where you start doubting yourself or thinking negatively, like anxiety or depression? If you're comfortable sharing that kind of stuff, and how did you come past it?
Man, I'm 31 now. Um, Rewinding back to when I was 21, I think it was 21. I was going to school at Mississippi College and had some things to happen that caused me to go through um, a self-diagnosed, probably a mild depression.
Mm-hmm.
Went through a breakup. It's my first breakup. So like, how do you handle this rejection? I had some friends in ministry that we were no longer friends, and they left the ministry, so that kind of hurt. I'm like, I thought we was cool, and y'all just dip out without saying anything. And then most the biggest thing to me was, me being struggling with perfectionism and being, not addicted, but probably less word than addicted to like accomplishments and, making the honor roll, this and that, and made some choices where I didn't graduate on time. And real quick tangent there, it don't matter how long it take you to get your degree, because when you get your degree, it doesn't have an expiration date, or it doesn't say completed in 5 years, completed in 10 years. But that's another story for another day. And so I wish my 21-year-old self knew that. And so I went to the graduation of the class that I was supposed to graduate with. And bro, I walked out of the graduation because I didn't want nobody to see me all sad, because I'm like, I supposed to be there. And so all those things together combined to put me in like this depression. I didn't know how to to deal with it. So I ended up, that was my first time going to counseling. And with counseling, you don't go there just because something is, if something is wrong with you, you go. But you don't go there just because something is necessarily wrong with you. But now I still go monthly just so I can make sure everything is right with me. And so that was one bout of depression that I dealt with. And I mean, if you're dealing with that, friends, don't suffer in silence. Don't suffer in isolation, because your sharing your story shines light into the darkness that is depression. Depression is a disease that can grow in the dark. Don't be ashamed. Get the help that you need. And so I got the help that I needed, and now because of that experience, I've been able to impact others. Like I go into full depth with my bout with depression. In my podcast, Real People, Real Talk, episodes 4 and 5, and go into depth. The depression kind of, it kind of comes back, as we talked about. It's like the common code of life. I experienced it again when I moved from Mississippi to New Orleans, and I didn't know anybody there. I was away from my family and my friends, and um, I ran to food. And that's another thing, like the people in the church, we don't like to talk about, because we're like, we're not going to drink, we're not going to have sex, we're not going to smoke or insert any other outside sin. But while people are not looking, I'm going to go eat. I'm going to overeat. And food, you can, the same way people abuse alcohol, they can abuse food too. And so that was the thing that I abused during my time with depression. So if you know that you're like an extrovert and you got to look at the triggers, but you're sleeping a lot more, you're not going out as more, you need to know your triggers. And so all that to say, I dealt with depression. I got the help that I needed, and I still go to a counselor once a month just to have that mental check in. So yeah, that's part of my story, man. That's part of my story.
And man, first of all, thank you for sharing that, because that is brave for you to be able to have that strength and looking back and reflecting on that. And because we're talking about a sensitive issue, for people out there that are listening or listening to the podcast or viewing us live, if you're going through any type of stress or anxiety to the point where it's dysfunctional to you, it's affecting your daily life, you could always, seek help. The National Suicide Prevention Line, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-8255. It's 800-273-8255. That is the phone number you can call for assistance, or you could seek help from people like your friends, family members. You could reach out to your religious community, your religious leaders for additional help and support. So again, thank you, Paul, for having the strength to share that information, because this is a delicate issue.
Right. And I saw this other quote. There was like, I forgot how they said it, but long story short, like, as you speak out and you raise awareness, you don't know who needs to hear your story. And so that's why it's so vital that you don't suffer in silence, that you share your story. Because I remember I was on this mental health panel, and everybody that was on the panel, they struggled with, whether it was bipolar, whether it was autism, and just struggle with different things. But they were high functioning. Like, some of them were therapists, some of them were podcasters, some of them were life coaches. And I say that to say this: as each person was sharing their story, it kind of like we took our power back. Like, yep, we deal with this, we dealt with this, but we're still thriving. We're still being and doing all that God has called us to be and do. And so share your story. People need to hear your story. And you may be looking, or you may be watching or listening and say, my story. Yes, your story. Everybody has a story to tell. Like, real quick story. I remember, dealing with like imposter syndrome when I was starting my podcast. Like, what do I have to say? We deal with that doubt, we deal with that fear, and different blogs or articles will say there's, you go into Apple Music, Apple Podcasts, there's over 500,000 podcasts there. And so I'm like, so everybody has already spoken on it. But then the Lord just kind of laid it in my heart, like, but they're not Paul.
That's right.
And so
That's
exactly,
right.
they're not Paul, they're not Tajani, they're not you. Insert your name. You have something that you need to share with the world, and share it with the world. You never know the impact. Instead of asking what can go wrong, ask what can go right. So
That's
just
right.
want to, didn't mean to preach at you, but I just want to encourage the listener and the watcher.
That's right. My mission statement actually for my podcast is sharing information and knowledge and experiences, hoping that at least one person who listens to it benefits from it.
I love it.
It's not about we don't want. We know some people are gonna have opinions about what we share and whatnot, but there's one
Right.
person that's gonna benefit from it, and that's the person we're speaking to. And so it's the same thing for you. You have a story to tell, just like Paul. Yep,
Amen.
there's millions and millions of podcasts out there, but they're not you. So, hey,
Exactly.
share your knowledge and experiences. And Paul, so we talk about are there any, going back to your story that you just shared with us, what were some of the things you would say that helped you get to that place where you feel comfortable asking for help?
I just knew I was not myself, and so I was like, there's something wrong here, and so I need to seek help.
Wow.
And so at the school that I went to, we had like free counseling available. So I was like, what's the worst that can happen? And so I went and got the help that I need. And looking back on it, just some different things, that not just a counseling part, but maybe if it's not like major depression, or maybe it's lower than that. But I'm not a professional. But all to say, I leaned into my relationships, um, time with my family, time with my friends, making memories. Um, I lean into my relationship with the Lord, time in the Word. I'm reminding myself of who God say that I am. Time in prayer, and so those are some practical ways. One of the things, and this kind of goes to like my personal self-care routine that I do now. I practice gratitude. I remember I wrote down, I counted my blessings. We hear the phrase, "Hey, count your blessings," but I literally did that, and so I got up to like 100 and something. And I was saying, Lord, I thank you that I have godly parents. I thank you for my beautiful wife. I thank you for her family, who is now my family. Well, I thank you for the apartment that I live in, the job that I have. I just go on and on and on and on and on, and like the big things and the small things. And what I would do is I would read those on Mondays, because Monday they say it's a certain percentage of a chance that you would have a heart attack, and it's Blue Mondays. And so I wanted to combat that and have blessed Mondays instead. So I practice gratitude. That's part of my self-care routine. I practice, well, I need to get back to this. It hasn't been weekly, but I try to do weekly check-ins with my wife. And if you're not married, this could be with your best friend, or it could be with a parent, or with a cousin. And so what we do is we'll say, how you doing spiritually? What you've been reading in the Word? How's your time in prayer? How you doing physically? And so my wife was like, hey, you drinking your water? And then for me, she asks, hey, are you getting your sleep? Because I can stay up late because my mind just be thinking and planning. And just how you doing? It's physically? Oh yeah, how you doing? Emotionally, like, are you stressed out? Like, what can I do to lighten your load? Do I need to do all the laundry this week and help with the cooking, or vice versa? And so that's one thing that we do, is check-ins. And man, to Johnny, so this other thing that I do, part of my personal self-care routine that I saw on Instagram, it's
Uh-huh.
called Vent and Joy. And it was like, instead of venting about the things that instead of venting about our complaints, what if we vented about our joy? And so I do this with my wife, I do this with my friends, and with the college students that I minister to. I would say, hey, what are some things that has brought you joy this week? And man, Johnny, man, it's an immediate mood changer and mood booster. And you can see people smiling as you ask them the question, what are some things that you do that brings you joy? And man, I got like a list, man. I walk and I jog while listening to podcasts, getting that sunlight, getting that fresh air. I'm starting to sleep more. Been putting a lot of work into my podcast and my craft, but I get to a certain time, I'm like, all right, Lord, because sleep is really a form of trust in the Lord. I'm like, all right, I did the best that I could with this day. I'm going to sleep. And so getting your rest is self-care. Fridays are like my Sabbath. And for those that don't know the Christianese language, Sabbath is like the day of rest. God created the world 6 days and he rested on the seventh. So Friday is a day where I don't do any, work for the church unless there's an emergency, but don't take any calls or things like that. And just a day where I have a shorter to-do list, more white space on my calendar. And because we need to realize, because we live in this Western culture, this grind, team no sleep. And if somebody say they got 3 hours of sleep, somebody want to one up them and say, well, I got 1 hour of sleep. And that's not good for your mental health. That's not good for your emotional health. And so that's why I have like this day where I slow down, I get my rest, driving and listening to like the self-care playlist that I got, just listen to some tunes. Sometimes it's chill and mellow, and sometimes it's like, hey, let's get it. And so it just goes back to intention. And what you see here with my list, it may not work for you, and your list may not work for me. So self-care and self-love need to be contextualized and personalized to find something that works for you. And last thing I gotta say this: do not postpone your joy. And this is related to self-care, self-love, and mental health. A lot of times we say, you know what, as soon as I graduate, I'm gonna be happy. As soon as I get married, I'm gonna be happy. As soon as I get the job, I'm gonna be happy. As soon as you insert whatever, I'll be happy. And I'm just here to tell you that thing may not ever happen. And you just gotta find happiness and joy in the present. Carpe diem, if you will. Live in the now. So I know I can get on the rant. So to Johnny, talk to me, man.
Man, hey, I'm just sitting over here absorbing the knowledge, man. I was like, keep talking, because I can't follow that, man.
Well, since you said keep talking, it was two more things I wanted to say. So another thing with your self-care is I journal. I remember in the month of August, it's my first time doing it. I journaled daily, and it was a joy journal. So it goes back to that event joy. I write down what brought me joy this day, and was just super intentional with that, because the other thing, like, so this year on August 31st, I turned 31 on the 31st, and that was like my golden birthday, and that's like my last big birthday before you get to like 40, 50, 60, etc. And I had big plans to do like a roaring 20s type party, Gatsby party, but COVID was like, nah, you ain't doing it.
That's
And
right.
so I was very down, but I was intentional, and like all glory to the Lord. And then like gotta give my wife a lot of credit. We made the most of the moment. We couldn't have a big party, but we had a party on Zoom. And through Zoom, that was my first time having a birthday party where I had people from different time zones and people from different seasons in my life, whether I knew them in college or high school or seminary. And I'm like, at what other time would all these people be in one room, so to speak? And then we did like the drive-by birthday thing. And to Janet, man, bro, it should have taken only like 5 minutes, but I was so happy to be out the house and see everybody. I gave each car like at least 3 minutes of this one-on-one time, and it took about 30 minutes, but that just filled my bucket. And so journal your wins, journal your joy. And so that's what my personal self-care routine looked like. So find you one and do it. Take care of yourself, fam.
Man, hey, you answered all the questions that I have for you, and I have no additional questions. So what we got, I'm gonna give you another time to give us if you have any additional ways that people can self-care or just take care of themselves that you haven't already discussed. You can go ahead and do that before we round up this episode, because you answered all the questions I had.
For real. My bad, bro. I ain't mean to get ahead of everything.
It's all good. Hey,
Man,
it's good.
I think I said most of everything. Only thing else I would probably add to it, I think I kind of alluded to it earlier. Like self-care also includes setting boundaries, protecting your peace, protecting your mental health. Self-care also looks like, not just the sleep, but self-care. The other side of self-care is being intentional with your health, like getting the checkups, calling the eye doctor or getting the physical checkups. Maybe it's putting the alcohol down, putting the soda down, and drinking some water. And to me, I was talking with one of the young adults that I do ministry with, and it was like, what does self care look like from a biblical perspective, Christian worldview? And one of the things that he said, like, part of self care is walking in purpose. And I never equated those two things. But when I'm preaching, or when I'm in my homemade studio, aka my closet, um, recording a podcast and sharing this information with the world, when I'm doing those things of helping people to go from surviving to thriving, I am most fulfilled. And so that's like a whole nother level of self-care, that when you're walking in purpose, when you're doing the things that God has called you to do, and you being who God has called you to be, there's a level of fulfillment that you can't get anywhere else. And so that's another part of self-care. And the last thing I want to say, man, one thing that's really been in my spirit, on my heart, and on my mind, just in this 2020, it's this phrase called shoot your shot. That's what the young people say. And when I talk about that phrase, I'm talking about you need to shoot your shot, and you need to do that thing that God has been stirring in your heart to do. And for some of you, it may be going to school or going back to school. For others, it may be starting a podcast, starting a YouTube, writing or publishing your book or your spoken word or your poetry, starting the business. Okay. And so all these things that you've been like putting off and waiting for the right time. I'm here to tell you, the right time to do right, the right time to do what God has called you to do is right now. I didn't wait until I had the best mic. I'm just going to use this bad boy to a run out. I didn't wait till I had the best mixer or the Rodecaster Pro or all this, or a private paid for studio with the panels and everything. I didn't wait for that, because if I'd have been waiting for that, I'd have been waiting forever, because COVID, has been crazy.
That's
So
right.
start with what you have, and start with exactly. Start with what you have. I may get the numbers wrong. I'm reminded of when Jesus fed 5,000 plus. I think it was 5 loaves and 2 fish. If I get it wrong, don't judge me. All right, I know I'm a pastor, but 5 loaves and 2 fish. And with that, I remember that they were trying to feed the people, and the disciple says, "What is this little among so many?" And God was like, "Give me what you got." And that's a message for you. God is saying, "Give me what you have," and He will use it to reach the masses. And whether that masses is 5,000 plus, or as Johnny said, it could be just one. And really, one is more than enough. So shoot your shot. Shoot your shot. Do that thing that God has been calling you to do. And as you're walking in purpose and you're walking in obedience and you're doing those things, that's self-love. That's self-care.
Wow, Paul, that's awesome, man. All right, so I have two more questions for you.
Okay.
The first one is, what are you grateful for in 2020?
Man, I am grateful for the opportunities that podcasting has afforded me. If I was never a podcaster, I would never have got to be on this show, and to meet another brother that's doing good things. And so I'm grateful for podcasting, just that community.
Awesome. And the last question for you is, if you had one superpower, what would that be to change something? And you know
Mm,
that you can't fail if you try it.
a superpower. It probably would be the ability to fly. So therefore, two reasons why I like to travel, and so I can just fly to where I want to go and not worry about checking in on the plane. Then also I like to play basketball. So it'd be nice if 5'7" to finally dunk on somebody. So that would be mine, to fly for selfish reasons.
It's self-care.
Exactly.
Oh my God. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And the last thing that we've asked Paul to do is writing a letter to the younger Paul. And Paul is, he mentioned a few times already that he's 31 years old as of August of this year. And happy belated birthday for that. And
Thanks, man.
looking back, pre going to school or when you were younger, what were some of those things that you would tell the young Paul coming up? So now is the time to put that letter and tell the viewers and listeners of this podcast a word or two that you would tell that young person coming up.
Yeah, I read this short letter. Before I do, Johnny, I just want to thank you. You're such a gracious host. I know I got ahead of things, and so I appreciate your gracious host. So you're doing a good job. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
This is what I would say. Dear 21-year-old Paul, don't worry and don't fret because God has a way of working things out for your good and for His glory. You just have to trust Him even when you don't feel or see Him moving. Things may not always look good, seem good, or feel good, but Paul, you have a promise in Romans 8:28 that God will work it out for your good. Also, Paul, you are currently living in the good old days, so don't rush to the next season. Take time to enjoy life now. Enjoy the journey. Take pictures, make memories, go on spontaneous road trips, do the things that bring you joy. Also, Paul, you don't need that many clothes or that many pairs of shoes. Save your money to spend on experiences and travel, and also save your money because the older you get, the more expensive life gets. I hate to break that to you. Don't neglect your health. Make better eating choices and keep a consistent routine of working out. The older you get, the harder it can be to stay healthy and get healthy. So get healthy now. And keep reading those books. That's definitely going to come in handy when you start Well, I don't want to spill the beans on you, past tense, Paul. But lastly, Paul, 21-year-old Paul, you don't have to have it all figured out. Life is full of up and downs. Keep pressing forward. Don't settle for less. Don't accept mediocrity. Don't place any limits on yourself. And so this is a letter from your 31-year-old self. It's actually a letter to my present self because 31-year-old Paul, needed to hear all of those things.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. 21-year-old Paul and 31-year-old Paul.
Right.
Awesome, man. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul is the host of the Real People Real Talk podcast, and you can find that in your favorite podcast platform. Anywhere you listen to your podcast, you can find him. And then also you are able to follow Paul on Instagram at Paul W. Calcote. His last name is Calcote. Instagram is Paul W. Calcote. And that's how you can reach him for additional information. And you can follow his content on any place that you listen to your podcast, from Apple Podcasts to Amazon to Spotify to Stitcher. Everywhere he is there. So enjoy the conversation. Make sure that you take care of yourself. Taking care of yourself is also indirectly taking care of the people you love. Paul, any last minute things you want to say before we leave our listeners and viewers?
Man, I've said enough. The only thing I would say is take responsibility for your mental health. To Johnny, you said it best. As you're taking care of yourself, you're really taking care of others. And also just want to just thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation. You are a great host and interviewer. Like the question that you asked really made me like dig deep. So I'm grateful for you, my brother.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody that's listening. We've had fun talking with you and sharing our experiences. And we hope to catch you on the next one.